It's me coming right back at you with another VHS. I've kind of this spring in the last couple of weeks or so, I was on a kind of a VHS binge. I bought all these VHS tapes years and years ago, like this one I got, looks like in 2009, and I just never watched it. But I was kind of like, I watched a VHS, I watched Remote, which I just reviewed, which was the last movie I just reviewed, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of quaint, revisiting and watching some VHS. It brings you back to the old days of the 80s and 90s and stuff. So I had this sitting around ever since 2009 apparently, that I got from Half Price Books, and for some reason the VHS is normally $3 or normally $1, and for some reason this is $3. Maybe because it's cited. It's an Anchor. Was it? Yeah, it's an Anchor Bay collector's edition, which is really nothing collector about it, But it was released in the good old days of Anchor Bay in 1999, when Anchor Bay was more, whatever, more cool or whatever. But this is something amazingly, having gotten into horror in 1988, that I'd never seen until just a week ago or something like that, which I didn't know at the time was a made-for-TV movie, but it kind of figures when you look at it and you see it's like presented full frame and it's not rated, because the not rated kind of tells you it's made for TV. So I'm reviewing the very first Trilogy of Terror, which of course is the three-part like horror movie-ish thing that was made by Dan Curtis, 1975, for TV, I guess. I don't think it says anywhere here that it was made for TV, but it was. They don't want to scare people away. So having put in Trilogy of Terror, obviously 75 is really just kind of, it's cool to watch an old something, even if it's a movie or TV or whatever, from 1975 for that nostalgia aspect. I mean, I've always known about this. I've always, this face is really, really, famous, and I've always known about that face in the title Trilogy of Terror, but I had no idea, anything more about it. So we'll review the story by story. So it's 3 stories, hence the Trilogy of Terror title. The first story is Julie. All 3 stories feature the lovely, at the time, Karen Black, who's pretty damn sexy in this Trilogy of Terror. And the first story centers around this kind of what do they call her in the old days? Old maid, teacher, if you will, kind of nerd, recluse, just shy, whatever kind of teacher. I don't know if she's teaches at a high school or college, probably college. And this one college student tells his friend, yeah, man, he has fantasies about her, and he's like, I wanna, I'm gonna get with her, man. I'm gonna whatever. He probably figures she's an easy target or whatever, and she's obviously attractive and stuff like that. But beneath those, there was not a picture of her with the glasses on there, but on this box. But beneath those glasses and the nerdy disposition or whatever, he sees a sex pot or whatever. And so he's gonna. Long story short, the plan is to basically take advantage of her, and I guess he takes her to a drive-in and puts some whatever, roofies or whatever the hell. I don't do it personally myself to women, so I don't know what he puts in there, but whatever makes a woman fall asleep or pass out or whatever, and at the drive-in puts them in their pop, root beer I think, takes her back to his place and takes pictures of her, we assume he takes naked pictures of her, and I think we're meant to assume he basically screws her while she's drugged. I think it's TV after all, you can't really whatever. But I think we're made, at least my perverted, dirty mind assumes that's what I'm going to go with, that he ravaged her while she was unconscious. So turns out that this movie, this thing is really old. It's 40 years old. Exactly 40 years old this year, I think, if I'm doing my math correctly. 80, 90. Yeah, 40 years old, Trilogy of Terror. So I think I can tell you, I'm going to spoil out the outcomes of these stories and give my thought about it. So basically, long story short, it turns out that when he thought, he had her under his spell and was going to blackmail her to continue to screw him or whatever, because he had pictures of her, nude pictures. It turns out that, in fact, she was under his control, and the whole reason why he desired her is because she made him desire her somehow. They don't really show how, but and it turns out that she, in actuality, used him when he thought he was using her, which is really kind of a cool idea and really a twist that I didn't expect. And it turns out that I think he somehow, I can't even remember how, I watched it a week ago or something. I think she ends up killing him. I think she might poison. I think she poisons him or something, and kills him. And it turns out, I think the episode, or the first story ends with, her putting the scrap, the paper story of this student having died in a scrapbook, which features tons and tons of other guys who had died mysteriously or whatever. So I mean, this is just like a hobby that she's done over and over and over and over and over. So that was the first story of Trilogy of Terror was really cool, and a complete fantastic twist that you didn't expect. So I'm not going to give star ratings for each story, but that was a great story. The second story, which is Millicent and Therese, again, all three stories feature, which is good because she's sexy, feature Karen Black playing different parts. In this case, altogether 4 parts. In this particular story, 2 parts. This one's just this story. I could kind of sense the because of the way the first story was a trickery. And I kind of feel like this story should have been the first one, because of the trickery in the first story. I was able to discern before the end, the payoff of the second story, what was actually the case, which is this particular, like, I can't remember exactly, but this particular woman that played by Karen Black plays two personas. So, but in the movie, or in the story, it's portrayed as 2 different people. One who's kind of very much like the character in the first story, this timid, whatever, just girl or whatever, and then this other character, which is like this hoish, hot, super. I can't remember what the hell. After Millicent reveals Therese's provocative past to her new boyfriend and drives him away, she begins to fear for her life. To protect herself, Millicent takes matters into her own hands, and the 2 sisters end up tangled in a spell of witchcraft with deadly consequences. I can't remember anything about it except for the fact that, spoiler alert, like I say, the 2 characters, the slutty character and the shyish, whatever whatever you want to call it, non-slutty character, are both the same. They're not 2 people in the story, but they're both 2 personalities played by the same person, which, like I say, I could see that surprise ending coming because of the surprise ending of the first story. So had it been up to me, I would have put this story first, so I wouldn't, be aware. Of course, then if you put this story first, but see, the surprise ending, though, of the first story is so surprising that you wouldn't necessarily, even if it came after this story, you wouldn't necessarily guess it. So I personally, if I had done this Trilogy of Terror, I would have switched the first 2 stories around, leaving, of course, the last one, which is probably the most famous and probably one of the more, the famous story of the Trilogy of Terror, which is the I guess it's called Amelia, but this is based on an old Richard Matheson story, which of course was a guy who, correct me if I'm wrong, wrote a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes and all this and that. And this movie's really cool because it's like I don't know, in a way it's like 3 Twilight Zone episodes in the in the mid 70s. So it's kind of cool. I like short stories because not every movie really. Some movies just drag and drag and drag, and I kind of like the idea of just a 20 or 25 minute story and stuff like that, So that's kind of one thing that's cool about this movie. But like I say, the third story is the one which I think his original title, I can't remember what the original title for the story is, which is the one with the a woman who was dominated by her mother just purchased her new boyfriend a Zuni hunter doll described in a scroll as he who kills. According to legend, if the chain around its waist is ever removed, an evil spirit will be unrestrained. When Amelia gets the doll home, she accidentally loosens the chain after a fight with her mother and unleashes a raging beast with only one intention: to kill, ill, 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 ill. So like I say, I would assume that the last story with the Zuni fetish doll is probably the most famous one of the three stories in the original Trilogy for Terror, and understandably so. It's kind of the more entertaining one in the aspect of actually having some, you know, gimmickry with the, you know, who doesn't love, you know, like just dolls and shit that are alive. Of course, if you're familiar with, which I hope you're not for your own sake, with the Charlie Band ripoff, which actually is one of Karen Black's last movies, Ooga Booga, he completely rips off this whole idea of this, like, you know, African or whatever the hell it is character with the spear and shit like that. He just completely rips it off and even has Karen Black in it, apparently for probably one scene or something. But getting back to story, it's, you know, the Zuni fetish doll story is probably 20 minutes long or something like that. I've actually looked on YouTube, and you can see the whole movie, or like each story separately on YouTube. So if you haven't seen these, I would definitely recommend checking them out, especially this last one, which I'm pretty sure you can see just in its own video, which I'll probably take some clips from potentially, because I don't have a DVD to rip. All I have is a VHS of it. But I kind of just explained the whole story when I read the back. It's like, you know, this girl buys this Zuni fetish doll for her boyfriend or whatever, who I think might be a professor or a teacher or some kind of history, whatever, science buff or something. And his mom, she had plans with mom for the dinner that night, and then she was gonna go out with a boyfriend to give him this, and mom's like, no, you gotta see me, and she cancels a plan with the boyfriend, and reluctantly, like, starts making dinner to have with mom, and like the chain falls off the, which is kind of funny, you know, because when it happens in the movie, in the story, it's like falls off, and it's just like dun dun dun, you know, it's just like, oh no, you know, you knew it was coming, but it was just kind of cool. One thing I like about this last story is just kind of like very much like Child's Play would end up doing over 10 years later. That this kind of like this cool, just apartment atmosphere, which is just, I think she's the only one in this story, so it's this very, you know, kind of lonely, creepy, you know, sense of her being all alone, and then obviously this doll ends up disappearing and running around, and all this and that, and all this and that, and the story ends with kind of a cool twist ending where, you know, she battles this thing and thinks she's got it down, and battles it and thinks she's got it down, and puts it in the oven and thinks you know, burns it alive, and thinks she's won, and then the thing's like just a smoldering piece or whatever, and she opens up the oven and it's like, and you don't know what the hell, it's like the camera goes into her face or something, and she's like, ugh, and you don't really know what's going on. And then I think we don't see mom arrive, but we cut to the story ends with her seeing like, or us seeing her like in a robe, crouched down, like with a knife, waiting for mom to arrive, in this kind of tribalistic, you know, Zuni, whatever, hunter style. And you know, this doll has these specific kind of teeth that are jagged. So, you know, they're kind of memorable. So then as we're like pan up and see her face and we zoom in, she's like this, and then she'll smile as she's like doing the knife on the ground, and we see that you can even see where they're like, they just stop. It's kind of bad makeup, but she's got these fake teeth that are pointed like this at the end. So basically it turns out that she was possessed. You know, she kind of just did a good job at destroying, or at least in this story, destroying the doll. And it turns out that the doll spirit actually went into her and is going to kill mom when mom arrives for dinner. And that's the end of the story. So that's pretty fantastic ending. Of course, all these three stories have kind of a twist ending like that. And that's kind of, it just made me laugh. And as you can see, it made me laugh now. And this review's going on way too long. And the stars for the overall movie of Trilogy of Terror is probably, as much as I like it, I guess it's kind of just like, forget it. I was gonna go 2.5, but let's go 2 3/4 stars for Trilogy of Terror as a whole. Karen Black's just adorable and just hot and cute and whatever, and it's, you know, I sure as hell don't mind watching her for all these stories, and basically 4 personas throughout the whole movie. So it's cool to have finally, you know, seen this after, well, like I say, 40 years of its existence without having me seen it, and now I just saw it. But like I say, I had this VHS lying around for ever since 2009, and it's like time to whip it out and watch it. So like I say, you can see this whole thing, I think, on YouTube. So if you haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. And thank you very much for watching this potentially maybe overly long review, but it's hard to, you know, to keep it short when you're doing 3-part movies. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.